2019, which was declared the International Year of Indigenous Languages under the auspices of the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, has brought a greater focus on these indigenous peoples' languages. There are 9 tribes of the indigenous peoples, namely the Arawaks, Arakunas, Akaweos, Caribs, Makushis, Patamonas, Wapishans, Waraos, and Waiwais. All 9 of these tribes speak different indigenous languages as their first language. Principal Political Secretary of the People's National Congress Reform and Minister of State Don Hastings Williams expressed the view that the party is looking forward to nationalizing indigenous languages. The PNCR secretary explained that currently there is a language barrier that many indigenous people face when accessing public services and even in instances of public security.
If a policeman decides to go and serve in the hinterland, we're having some challenges simply because that policeman or that officer cannot relate. Let's take, for example, Baramita. Their first language is Carib. And so for a police officer or a probation officer to go to communicate directly with them is a challenge because that policeman doesn't know Carib. He or she hasn't learned before he goes in there. So there is that gap between.
It was President David Granger who on several occasions had advised the administration of the police force to start training officers to speak and translate indigenous languages. Evidently, there are officers who speak several native languages, but this is just a mere handful.
And how can we learn this if we don't have a mechanism whereby people on the coast get access, or a way of learning these languages? And hence this government or the PNCR and the coalition government, that is what we're trying to do, not only to preserve, but to ensure that others can, use it as a secondary language.
The state minister stated that the government has already made a start in making indigenous languages more common among non-indigenous peoples. She stated that this could also help preserve the native languages.
We have made a start. We have made a start as a government, and because we realize and we recognize that our children have a difficulty, and our children, especially in the hinterland, have a difficulty because they're learning English language as a second language. It is a second language for me too. I learned English, conjugating these verbs, like how we conjugate these Spanish verbs. That's the way I learned English. So I had to learn it because our national exams are written in English. But I always told myself if our national exams were written and sit in the Akawayo or Carib, I would excel because that's my language.
Javon Vickery, HGP Nightly News.